And that truth alone can transform the entire course of your life. Because the moment you stop identifying with the old version of yourself, the one weighed down by fear, regret, doubt, and reaction, you begin stepping into a completely different reality. This is the hidden power contained within the beginning of each day. Before the world speaks to you, before circumstances demand your attention, before old habits reclaim your mind, there exists a sacred opportunity to consciously decide who you will become. Most people miss this moment entirely. They wake up and immediately return to yesterday's fears, yesterday's disappointments, yesterday's identity. And without realizing it, they recreate the same emotional state, the same reactions, the same outcomes over and over again. But this speech reminds you that you are not condemned to repeat the past unless you continue agreeing with it inwardly.
The morning is not merely the start of another schedule, it is the doorway into a new state of consciousness. And consciousness is the foundation of experience itself. What you accept within becomes reflected without. What you repeatedly feel to be true begins shaping your perception, your behavior, your energy, your expectations, and eventually your physical reality. That is why your first moments matter so deeply. They are not small. They are creative. They are formative. They quietly determine the direction of your entire day long before external events appear. If you rise in fear, you unconsciously prepare yourself to encounter more reasons for fear. If you rise in stress, the mind begins searching for conflict before the day has even unfolded. But if you rise in peace, confidence, gratitude, and certainty, life begins reflecting those states back to you in countless subtle ways. Opportunities appear differently. Conversations feel different. Your reactions soften. Your presence changes. The world itself begins responding to the energy you carry within. Not because reality is random, but because your inner state influences the reality you perceive and participate in. This is why the speech continually returns to one central truth. Your outer world mirrors your inner world. The circumstances you experience are not separate from the consciousness you occupy. They are connected to it. Your beliefs, assumptions, emotions, and inner conversations shape the lens through which life unfolds. The version of yourself you identify with determines the experiences you naturally attract, allow, and sustain. If you identify as rejected, life echoes rejection. If you identify as powerless, life reflects struggle. But if you begin identifying as chosen, worthy, loved, capable, guided, and aligned with divine purpose, then reality gradually reorganizes itself around that new self-concept. And this is not about pretending. It is not about forcing fake positivity while secretly drowning in fear. It is about inward transformation. It is about becoming emotionally loyal to the version of yourself you wish to embody. The speech teaches that true manifestation does not begin with controlling circumstances. It begins with changing identity. The world changes when self changes, not temporarily, not superficially, but deeply. That is why faith becomes so important throughout this message. Faith is not wishful thinking. Faith is not passive hope. Faith is inner knowing before physical evidence appears. It is the willingness to remain loyal to the unseen reality you have accepted within yourself, even when the outer world still reflects old conditions. Most people lose their power because they allow appearances to define their state. They wait for circumstances to improve before permitting themselves to feel peace, confidence, or certainty. But this speech reverses that understanding completely. It reminds you that inner change must come first. The outer world follows afterward. The seed does not bloom the instant it is planted, yet growth has already begun beneath the surface. In the same way, every new assumption, every new identity, every loving inner conversation begins moving reality before visible evidence appears. The unseen always precedes the seen. That is why persistence matters. Not force, not obsession, not desperate control, but gentle persistence in the new state. Returning again and again to the feeling of already being aligned with what you desire until it becomes natural. And perhaps the deepest message running through this entire speech is the invitation to release fear itself. Fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. These fears silently shape countless lives because people unknowingly build their identity around them. They become emotionally attached to the possibility of losing love, losing success, losing security, losing approval. Then life mirrors those attachments back to them. But the moment you understand your own creative power, fear begins loosening its grip. You no longer panic over temporary appearances because you understand appearances are not permanent truths. They are reflections of previous states, old assumptions made visible. And if assumptions created them, new assumptions can transform them. This understanding changes the way you move through life. You stop clinging desperately to outcomes. You stop worshipping circumstances. You stop treating delays as final. Instead, you begin resting inwardly in the quiet certainty that your reality is always responding to the consciousness you consistently occupy. This applies not only to relationships but to every area of life. Your health, your success, your confidence, your purpose, your peace, your future. All of it is deeply connected to the state you repeatedly return to within yourself. Every thought entertained repeatedly becomes a pathway. Every emotion practiced becomes familiar. Every inner conversation impresses itself upon the subconscious mind and eventually appears outwardly as experience. Your imagination is not meaningless fantasy, it is creative power. Your assumptions are not harmless thoughts, they are blueprints. That is why the speech urges you to become careful with your inner world. Not fearful but conscious, aware, selective about what you repeatedly agree with emotionally. Because whether you realize it or not, you are always affirming something. You are always rehearsing some identity, always expecting something, always imagining something about yourself, others, and life. And those inner movements become external reality over time. But once you awaken to this truth, you no longer have to live unconsciously. You no longer have to repeat inherited fears or old emotional patterns forever. You can choose differently. You can begin each day from a new state. You can decide that you are no longer the version of yourself defined by limitation, fear, rejection, insecurity, or lack. You can choose to become inwardly aligned with peace, confidence, love, abundance, purpose, and certainty now. And this is the real meaning of transformation. Not changing the mask you wear for the world, but changing the state you occupy within yourself when no one is watching. Because eventually the world must reflect that state back to you. Reality has no choice but to mirror the consciousness consistently impressed upon it. So as this entire message comes to a close, let its deepest truth remain with you. Your life is not being shaped only by circumstances outside of you. It is being shaped every day by the identity you accept within yourself. Every morning offers a new opportunity to choose that identity again, to release fear again, to return to faith again, to remember your worth again, to step into alignment again. You are not powerless. You are not forgotten. You are not separate from the creative force flowing through life itself. The same power that shapes reality moves through your thoughts, your imagination, your assumptions, and your awareness every single day. And when you finally stop seeking confirmation from the world before believing in yourself, everything begins changing. Not all at once, perhaps, but steadily, naturally, inevitably. The moment you truly understand that your inner world is the beginning of your outer world, you stop waiting for life to choose you. You begin choosing yourself. You begin walking differently, thinking differently, feeling differently. And from that transformed state, new experiences begin unfolding almost effortlessly. So tomorrow morning, before the world rushes in, remember this moment, pause, breathe, return to yourself. Decide who you will be before circumstances decide for you. Choose the state you wish to live from. Choose the version of yourself you wish to embody. Choose faith over fear. Choose certainty over doubt. Choose alignment over reaction. Because your day, your relationships, your future, and ultimately your entire life begin there within you first. And when your decisions begin coming from wisdom instead of pressure, your entire experience of life changes in ways you cannot immediately measure but deeply feel. You stop reacting impulsively to every circumstance. You stop allowing temporary emotions to control permanent directions. Instead, you begin moving from a deeper center within yourself, a place that is calm, grounded, aware, and no longer ruled by fear. This is what true alignment feels like. Not constant excitement, not endless emotional intensity, but a steady inner knowing that you are no longer lost inside your own mind. That is the transformation this entire message has been guiding you toward. not simply creating a better morning routine, not repeating positive phrases mechanically, but awakening to the realization that your inner state is the foundation from which your entire day unfolds. The person you become inwardly determines the reality you experience outwardly. And once you truly understand this, mornings are no longer ordinary. They become sacred beginnings, moments where consciousness itself can be redirected before old habits take over again. Most people wake up unconsciously. They immediately inherit yesterday's worries, yesterday's stress, yesterday's identity. Before they even rise from bed, they are already replaying fear, pressure, regret, comparison, and anxiety. Then they wonder why the day feels heavy before it has even begun. But this speech reminds you that there is another way to live. A way rooted not in reaction but in intention. A way where you consciously choose the state you will carry before the world begins influencing you. Because the truth is this: the state you repeatedly return to becomes your reality. If you continually return to overwhelm, life begins feeling overwhelming. If you continually return to doubt, the world begins reflecting uncertainty. But when you return again and again to calmness, clarity, trust, gratitude, confidence, and inner stability, those qualities slowly begin shaping the experiences, opportunities, relationships, and reactions that surround you. This is why the message says, "I choose who I am today." Those words are far more powerful than they first appear. They are not merely motivational language. They are a declaration of creative authority. They remind you that identity is not permanently fixed by the past. Identity is something you step into repeatedly through thought, feeling, imagination, and attention. The version of yourself you desire already exists as a possibility within consciousness. You do not need to force yourself to become it overnight. You simply begin occupying that state more consistently until it feels natural. And when it begins feeling natural, life changes from the inside out. You become steadier in situations that once overwhelmed you. You stop overreacting to temporary problems because inwardly you no longer feel powerless. Your emotions become less chaotic because your identity is no longer rooted in fear. You stop waiting for external conditions to finally give you permission to feel peace. Instead, peace becomes something you generate inwardly first. And from that place, your entire experience begins shifting. This is why the speech continually emphasizes feeling, not empty repetition, not forcing affirmations while secretly feeling anxious underneath, but genuine emotional alignment. Your subconscious responds far more deeply to emotional conviction than surface-level words. The feelings you repeatedly embody become instructions impressed upon the deeper mind, and the subconscious then begins organizing perception, behavior, reactions, and even external experiences around those emotional instructions. So when you say, "Today I am calm," "Today I am focused," "Today I move with purpose," the power is not only in the sentence itself. The power lies in allowing yourself to emotionally enter that state now, before the world gives you evidence for it. That is where transformation begins, not after the circumstances change, but before. The speech teaches that your energy influences every aspect of your day. The way you think influences the way you interpret events. The way you feel influences the way you speak, decide, respond, and carry yourself. Your inner state quietly affects conversations, opportunities, creativity, intuition, and even the emotional atmosphere around you. People often underestimate this because these shifts are subtle, but subtle things shape entire lives over time. A calm mind makes wiser decisions. A grateful heart notices opportunities others overlook. A centered spirit responds instead of reacts. A confident presence changes the way people interact with you. And a person who no longer wakes up in fear begins experiencing life completely differently. That is why this message invites you into a state of receiving instead of striving, not receiving from entitlement or passivity, but from alignment, from the understanding that life is not something you must constantly battle against. You are not meant to move through every day emotionally clenched, anxious, and bracing for disappointment. You are allowed to soften, allowed to trust, allowed to believe that support, guidance, provision, clarity, peace, and opportunity are available to you. And when you truly begin living from that assumption, something profound happens internally. Your nervous system settles, your thoughts become less crowded, you stop operating from constant survival mode. Your intuition becomes clearer because fear is no longer drowning it out. You begin hearing your deeper wisdom again. That is what this grounded quiet truly means, not emptiness, but inner stability, a calm connection to yourself that remains even when the world around you becomes noisy. And from that stability comes strength, real strength, not forceful control, but emotional steadiness, the kind of strength that allows you to move through uncertainty without collapsing into panic. This is also why fear begins losing power. Fear survives by convincing you that circumstances control your inner state. But once you understand that your state comes first, fear weakens. You stop giving every external event the authority to define your peace. You stop allowing every challenge to become proof that something is wrong with you or your future. Instead, you return inwardly to truth, again and again. You remind yourself you are guided, you are supported, you are capable, you are grounded. You are not abandoned by life. You are not powerless before circumstances. You are participating in the creation of your experience every single day through the consciousness you occupy. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this message is that it removes the pressure to become perfect instantly. It does not ask you to never feel fear again. It does not demand that you control every thought flawlessly. It simply invites you to return to alignment, return to awareness, return to intention, return to the version of yourself you truly wish to embody, again and again. Because transformation is not one dramatic moment. It is repeated inner choices practiced consistently over time. Each morning becomes another opportunity, another beginning, another chance to release the old identity, another chance to choose peace over panic, clarity over confusion, trust over fear, presence over reaction. And eventually, through this repetition, the new state stops feeling temporary. It becomes who you naturally are. You no longer have to force calmness because calmness becomes familiar. You no longer have to chase confidence because confidence becomes embodied. You no longer have to search desperately for stability because stability begins existing within you first. And once that happens, the outer world starts responding differently. Not magically overnight perhaps, but steadily, quietly, powerfully. Your conversations change, your reactions change, your relationships change, your opportunities change. Your entire experience of life changes because you change the consciousness from which life is being experienced. So let the final truth of this message remain deeply within you. You are not merely waking up each day to survive another set of circumstances. You are waking up each day with the ability to choose your state before the world chooses it for you. You are not powerless before life. You are influential within it. And the moment you begin each morning from awareness instead of habit, from intention instead of fear, from inner alignment instead of emotional chaos, you begin shaping a completely different reality one day at a time. So tomorrow morning, before the noise begins, pause for a moment, breathe slowly, become still, and remember, your day begins within you first. Your identity begins within you first. Your peace begins within you first. Your future begins within you first. Choose carefully what you carry into the morning, because the state you enter the day with quietly becomes the reality you experience throughout it. In the end, everything you have heard returns to one simple but life-changing truth. Your inner world is not separate from your outer experience. The thoughts you repeat, the assumptions you nurture, the emotions you dwell within, and the identity you accept as true quietly become the blueprint of your reality. This entire message has been pointing you back to the same realization again and again. You are not powerless before life. You are not merely reacting to circumstances. You are participating in creation itself through the state of consciousness you consistently occupy. Most people move through life believing the outer world has authority over them. They wait for circumstances to improve before they allow themselves to feel peace. They wait for another person to choose them before they feel worthy. They wait for visible proof before they believe change is possible. But this teaching reverses that entire way of living. It reveals that the outer world is not the starting point. Consciousness is. Reality begins within long before it appears externally. The world you experience tomorrow is being shaped by the assumptions you accept today. Every fear entertained repeatedly becomes a condition. Every belief nourished with feeling becomes a lived experience. Every inner conversation eventually finds its echo in the outer world. And because of this, your greatest responsibility is not controlling circumstances. It is mastering the state you return to within yourself. This is why faith matters so deeply. Faith is not blind wishing. It is not desperate hoping. Faith is the quiet inner conviction that what you desire already exists in consciousness before the senses confirm it. Faith means remaining loyal to the unseen reality even while appearances still reflect the past. It means understanding that the visible world is delayed. It is yesterday's consciousness made visible. And if you continue reacting emotionally to current appearances, you keep recreating the same conditions again and again. But the moment you stop allowing circumstances to define your identity, everything begins to shift. When you no longer identify as abandoned, rejection begins losing its power over your life. When you no longer define yourself through fear, relationships begin changing naturally. When you stop chasing love and instead become inwardly convinced you are already loved, valued, and unforgettable, the world begins reorganizing itself around that new belief. This is the deeper secret hidden beneath every part of this message. Life mirrors identity. You do not consistently experience what you merely want. You experience what feels true about yourself. If deep within you believe you are unwanted, life reflects uncertainty. If deep within you believe love leaves, reality arranges experiences confirming that fear. But when you begin accepting yourself as chosen, secure, worthy, and deeply loved, the mirror changes because consciousness itself has changed. And this truth extends far beyond relationships. It touches every part of existence. Your mornings matter because they are the doorway into your daily state of consciousness. The assumptions you impress upon yourself in those quiet moments before the world rushes in become the emotional atmosphere of your entire day. If you begin the morning grounded in peace, gratitude, clarity, and confidence, life begins responding to that state. Your reactions soften, your decisions become wiser, your energy becomes steadier. Opportunities appear differently because you are perceiving from a different identity. The same law governs timing. Nothing is truly late. Nothing is truly random. What appears externally arrives when your inner state aligns naturally with receiving it. A seed does not bloom the moment it is planted, yet growth begins immediately beneath the surface. In the same way, your desires begin moving into form the moment they are accepted inwardly with conviction. The unseen movement always precedes visible manifestation. That is why impatience weakens manifestation. Constantly checking for proof reveals identification with lack. But quiet certainty accelerates unfolding because it reflects possession rather than longing. And perhaps the most liberating realization of all is this: fear loses its power the moment you understand your creative nature. Fear survives only when you believe circumstances possess authority over you. But once you understand that the outer world reflects consciousness, fear begins dissolving naturally. Delays no longer terrify you. Silence no longer defines you. Temporary conditions no longer feel permanent. You stop worshipping appearances because you understand appearances are only shadows of former assumptions. The transformed version of you does not move through life anxiously searching for reassurance. They no longer beg the world to confirm their worth. They no longer chase love, force outcomes, or panic over uncertainty. Instead, they move with calm inner knowing. They understand that the state they consistently embody determines what reality eventually reflects back to them. This is true power, not controlling others, not manipulating circumstances, but mastering self. Mastering the inner world so completely that the outer world has no choice but to mirror the change. And so the invitation of this entire message is simple but profound. Stop identifying with old pain. Stop rehearsing loss. Stop giving your attention to fear. Stop waiting for the world to tell you who you are. Instead, decide inwardly. Decide that you are worthy now. Decide that you are loved now. Decide that you are supported now. Decide that your life is unfolding in divine order now. Persist in that identity long enough, and reality begins conforming around it. The old version of you, the fearful version, the doubtful version, the abandoned version, survives only through repetition. Withdraw belief from it, and it slowly dissolves. A new self emerges in its place, a calmer self, a steadier self, a version of you no longer controlled by appearances, but anchored in inner certainty. And when that transformation becomes natural within you, the outer world responds almost effortlessly. Relationships heal, opportunities appear, confidence grows, peace deepens. Life itself begins flowing differently because you are no longer creating from fear, but from alignment.